All right, another podcast up. This one's on video. I'm still in the process of deciding the best format exactly for this, but when you got important shit to do, you don't have time to just map it out all perfectly. Like, real perfection is the process of getting the action and then having that action in the world, moving yourself, taking the feedback, and then speeding up that cycle where you can have the action and the feedback and the action and the feedback. And then you keep iterating and then you create a masterpiece. And that's going to lead into what I'm wanting to talk about, which is very much like the long-term thinking. Like, stop thinking in terms of 2-week little sprints and think more in terms of decades. But at the same time, the decades are made up of the little sprints. So you need both. And that's a higher level of processing, a higher level of reasoning and forecasting and prototyping and all that good stuff, where you can factor in both the short term and the long term. And here in this episode, I'm about to go deep. I'm also looking at doing a lot more long form stuff. Like, we have the Self-Perfected podcast, and the episode today was 2.5 hours. And sometimes that stuff is just amazing because, I was listening to this the other day. Someone was talking about how sometimes you have fluff. Like, nowadays, everyone's trying to put stuff into a tweet or into a 30-second reel or whatever, and they'll be like, here's the 3 tips to be successful. 1, blah, blah, blah. And I could make videos like that all day long, and I'm sure I have a video that's probably exactly that. Because when you have experience and you have understanding and you've actually put yourself in the trenches for years and years and years, you have a lot of stuff you can share. And man, when you use TechnoTutor, you become so damn smart. It's amazing because your ability to articulate and take the words that are inside you and get them out is just like flawless. It's like water. It's so cool. So I just open my mouth and start speaking, and it's like all the stuff that I've used and put through TechnoTutor over the past 3.5 years, it can come out because I'm using the tool and I'm applying myself. But it's like, I know where this is headed to. I know between myself, my wife Jessica, the community, the people around me, all of it is, it's gonna be so freaking cool. Like, I've seen big things be built before, and I've seen people rise up and scale, and I've seen movements be made. I've seen things grow way too fast and then blow up. Like, one of the first people I got connected to that really opened my eyes to entrepreneurship, he was the head of culture for Groupon. And I had never even heard of that. And it was like from one of my mentors, he introduced me to him. And he explained how you can scale a culture too fast and it'll blow up. And that always stuck with me, that idea. And anyway, I'm sharing this for 2 reasons. One is because what I want to talk about in this episode is a really cool concept. It's like putting on glasses that can allow you to see reality straight up in a reality, in different parts of reality, and a way more helpful understanding, so that you can, the way you show up is less about like a quick win and a quick success and then you can relax. It's more about who you become. But the other part is, I'm sharing this where, like, the longer form stuff is going to be amazing because the fluff or the context or the extra tangents and examples and analogies, sometimes in those, that's where you get the real breakthrough, because you're listening to this because you want your life to get better, because there's some breakthrough you're looking for and all that. And like I was saying earlier, I can make these quick videos of, hey, these are 3 things you need to know and whatever. And that stuff is cool. And there's a time and a place for short, quick content. And then there's a time and place for the more drawn out long form, which I know this will morph into because I like those sometimes. Like, the other day I was listening to 45-minute talk, one of my favorite talks ever, called Revenge of the Ego. And it's like, when you let yourself just go into it, and it's like you are, okay, this is a really cool idea. When you're listening to a talk, let's say a 45-minute deep talk on something. Like there's this audio called Revenge of the Ego by Bernard Pullman, and it's gnarly. I mean, I've listened to that thing many times. It's one of the most challenging audios you'll listen to, but it's extremely profound when you can really sit with it and look at it. And that's one of the audios where, okay, so you're listening to it, and then internally you're processing it. And so you're now taking in new information, and you're looking at, like, so for example, I was looking at my life of like, okay, where am I still accepting a limitation within myself, still allowing like the unseen to direct my life instead of me intentionally directing my life. And so when you're listening to an audio intently, not just for mindless consumption, but even then, sometimes you have the best breakthroughs then. So I'm listening to that, and then within myself, I have a goal of why I'm listening to it, and it's such a powerful combination. I think it's really demonized in this day and age of like the professional student who's like always learning, and like rightfully so. If you're just learning and you don't have takeaways, you're of course, that's just abuse. You're abusing yourself. You're abusing the world because you're not taking in the information to then really go now apply to make your life better. So you just wasted 45 minutes or an hour or 2 hours or whatever. But you also probably waste all of your days too if you're thinking like that. But I'm not making this podcast for those people. But you might struggle with that from here and there, from time to time. But the demonization of the learning and the studying and the, like massive inputs. I used to have this for years, and rightfully so, for a while, because I knew I had to just get to work. Like I had to wake up, and the best thing I could have done is just go straight into my process. So the technical the self-forgiveness, which I do every day, but then just get to work. And for a while before I had that process, this was like back in 2018, I would wake up and I'd like go on a walk and just like listen to audios and stuff. But over time, I found that in the morning, if you can just really go apply yourself with everything, it's really powerful. And then as you're going throughout the day, and then you like empty yourself into what is the most important project at hand, then after that, it's like really helpful to then keep inputting in new quality information. And I'm saying this because this is going to segue nicely into the topic at hand today, is switching your mindset from thinking that you're going to at some point, quote unquote, get there. Now there's some nuance to this. There are certain milestones that collectively, for those of you who have taken on the purpose of, I'm here to create a world that's best for everyone. I'm here to be the best version of myself. I'm here to create the next generation to be geniuses and be principled and all that. There are milestones that we will hit, absolutely. But there's a shift. There's a really important shift to thinking, oh yeah, okay, once we change the system, once we get people into politics, once I have my kids and they're 18 and they're smart and they've now become a multimillionaire, then I'll relax. Then I'll be okay. Some of you, even the people who are still struggling with like drugs and alcohol, I bet there's that thought in your mind where you're like, hey, I'm going to like work really hard, live my purpose. And then finally, like after we make our big impact, then I don't know, maybe I'll like smoke some weed again, or I'll have a drink then, or whatever. Then I can go on vacation. And it's like this really weird, insidious like patterns of thinking where, yeah, you're looking for the result, so that way you can stop taking responsibility. And let's just get into this a little bit more to really identify and look at clearly what is the problem, so we can look at an alternative way of looking at things that has changed my life drastically in the past month since I've really heard this concept. Because it just makes so much sense. So, okay, another way of looking at this would be, let's say you're running a business and you're, making money for yourself and your family. And you're looking for like, okay, once I hit 10 million, I'm good. Once I hit a certain amount and then I can invest that in my 401k or in my, sorry, people listen to this, they're like 401k, oh, you noob. Okay, in your life insurance policy with your, indexed funds, and you have your money and it's compounding at 8% a year or 20% a year or whatever, right? And then you think that's when you're gonna finally be happy, or that's when you're gonna have success. It's like, that's such bullshit, because that's not, like, you're focused on the wrong thing. I'm not saying you have to now don't like invest your money or whatever, but I would look at where you're investing it. Are you reinvesting it back in your purpose? So it's a trap in thinking. So let me lay out now what is the point of this video. So now you have 2 words by which you can understand this. And the limited thinking is what we're going to call a finite game. A finite game. The other lens, which we're going to open up here, is a infinite game. So let's give some basic definitions. A finite game is where the amount of players is known and the end objective is known. Think of a football match or a competition of sorts, like you're like a bodybuilder or something. It's like you want to win whatever competition. Many of us look at a lot of our life, though, like a finite game where you're building a business. Yeah, once I hit X amount of money, then I'm good. The issue with this is that when you're going through life looking for just that victory, you're just playing in a very limited sense, and you're actually wasting your life away. The other is looking at and through the lens of an infinite game. And the infinite game is where there's no limit. There's no final score. The amount of players is unknown. The rules are not even necessarily fully defined. And a really cool example from this, so this was originally a topic in, it was back in the 80s, this was published, 70s or 80s. And then now Simon Sinek, he's one of the famous authors who popularized this. A lot of people are talking about this now. And because what I want to get to is how your purpose is an infinite game. And when you can really take that on and you really understand that, it's like something inside you shifts and just reality becomes more clear. And when you're more clear, you have more power, just everything gets better when you're more clear. So that's why I'm making this. So the infinite game versus the finite game is like, this is the best example that I've heard, is Microsoft made this thing called the Zune, and it was like their version of an iPod. And it was really awesome, like really like high definition, the resolution's great, the load time was great, the battery life was great. Everything about it was actually far superior to the iPod. And Simon Sinek's the one actually telling the story. And then he says how the Zune, he was gifted that by Microsoft because he gave some talk there or something. And then he goes to Apple and he tells one of the head of product or whatever at Apple, and he goes, hey, I got this Zune from Microsoft and it's amazing. I have to tell you, it's like way better than the iPod. And the executive from Apple, guess what he says? What do you think he says to that? He says, I have no doubt. Conversation over. So Simon's expecting him to be like, oh, no, ours is better because this or that, whatever. And it really highlights this point is Microsoft is playing the finite game. They're always comparing themselves to Apple. Apple's playing the infinite game. They're always looking to compete with themselves and make it better. They're in for the legacy, the next 100, probably 500 years, their vision. So I'm sharing this with you because where are you still playing the finite game? Here's another example that's not related to business, would be working out. Imagine the person, I'm sure you've never done this, where they say, yeah, I'm going to lose 30 pounds. New Year's resolution, I'm going to lose 30 pounds. I'm going to have that summer body by June or whatever. And maybe they even made it happen. But did the weight stay off? Of course not. Compare that to the person who says, I am going to be healthier year after year after year. I'm going to be in the best shape of my life year after year after year. And that's their goal. You see how there's a difference there? It's subtle, but it makes a world of difference. So, why am I talking about this? Finite game versus infinite game. Because everything in your life can be characterized by a finite game versus an infinite game. Like your marriage or your relationships, business partners, all of it. If you're in a finite game with a spouse, what would be some examples of that? You'd be like, oh, okay, well, I just want to make her happy. I don't want to have her get pissed off. We'll be together, potentially forever. It's like very limited thinking, and you're just looking to just always make it be okay. Whereas the infinite game is you're going to now factor in, who are you? What's your identity? What's her identity? Or vice versa, right? If you're man, woman, whatever. And how do you continually make it more and more awesome, realizing for the rest of your lives you're going to be better and better and better, instead of just trying to reach some point of, oh yeah, well, we're just going to go, and then when we're retired, we're going to travel or something. It's like a very, very, very limited way of looking at things. I'm sure you're able to start seeing this now. So without harping on the point too much of what is the difference here, this is now, I'm laying all this groundwork in this context because I'm going to encourage you to look at in your life, where are you still playing the finite game? Let's just start with your health. That's an easy one. Is it like you go to the gym and you're like, do you just go to the gym because you know you should go to the gym? Are you like trying to hit your PRs here and there? Or have you already adopted the infinite game? Because if you already have, it could even help just for you to recognize that you have. So now you have the vocabulary and the way to strengthen this. So yeah, maybe your goal is like every year to be in the greatest shape. Or every year you can do even a more physically challenging thing. Like maybe this next year you run a marathon or something, or do an Ironman or something like that. And that's the infinite game. Always being in the best shape of your life, or always being healthy, or whatever. See how that's a big difference when you can identify that for yourself? Now, let's say you're in business, and I'm not even going to entertain other business. I'm going to share the best infinite game business. So Goldman Sachs just released one of their reports. It's like early last week. And they were saying how 300 million jobs are expected to be replaced by AI. 300 million jobs is what they're predicting. They're analysts that they pay a lot of money to that are going to be automated. So if you're at Goldman Sachs or you're a banker, hit me up, because we have an unautomatable business, unautomatable purpose, AI proof. We'll use AI for certain things, like I use AI to help me name videos and stuff, and AI helps you find these videos and all that. AI is part of things. But in terms of AI replacing a job or a position, because we're playing the infinite game with what we work on. Techno tutor, effective education, all that. And as we're now looking at the future of work, the thing that you maybe thought was an infinite game, where you're like, oh, I'm going to develop my personal brand, and I'm going to sell solar, and I'm going to be great at being a sales trainer, or whatever you're doing. You may have thought that was an infinite game, but AI is really changing things. You're going to have to look at now how that is actually still a finite game. Now, here's the main point of this whole episode. The real infinite game that we're all playing, some are unaware that they're playing it, and they may go the rest of their life not knowing it. But for those of you who can see this, the ultimate infinite game is us living our purpose aligned with what's best for everyone. Meaning, the real infinite game is us continually optimizing and making reality better and better and better and better and better and better for ourselves, for our families, for our community, and critically, and for the entire world. Because if your quote unquote infinite game is you just being the best YouTuber, that's not, you're not being honest with yourself. If you really have the baseline compassion to look at the state of the world, it's like, YouTube is cool. I like YouTube. We can keep using YouTube. YouTube may keep crunching down on free speech, so who knows if it's going to be the best platform, but whatever. Let's just say it for the example. Let's say you want to be an influencer, but you're only looking out for yourself. You're still playing in survival mode. The real infinite game is to lift up humanity out of survival mode, and it's 100% possible, and we will make it happen. Now, whether you're going to be part of the solution or part of the problem, that'll be on you. I make these episodes to help sell you on why you should be part of the solution, why it's going to be the most fun and even better for you and less painful for you to be part of the solution. And again, it's like, I know that's a really big thing to say, that we have to change the system. We have to change how we do politics. We have to change how humanity is educated. But can you imagine this? Imagine, as part of the infinite game, is all of humanity getting smarter, more effective, more responsible, more creative, more mature, more intelligent, all of that combined. And now imagine in the next election cycle, if the average American, let's say, actually had discernment, had common sense reasoning, and they couldn't just be swayed by a headline here or there. Like, how great would that be? Where you could actually trust that the population was able to make an informed decision. Like, that's the infinite game, is us creating that. Because then everyone has access to an infinite game instead of just a survival-based system. Pretty cool when you think about it. I know this is very high level, and some of you might be like, what the hell does this have to do with anything? Well, it has everything to do with everything, because you're interconnected with everything. And if it's like in the past, you'd hear about like sad things happening on the other side of the world. You'd be like, oh yeah, I heard that there was some earthquake over here, or, this horrible thing happened, or there's a civil war over here. And it's very easy to then go back into your little box. The issue is, with how the money system has been propped up for so long, it's unraveling out of control. There's a lot, I'll probably make future episodes on that specifically. Listen to the Self-Perfected podcast, we talk about that all the time, of how the system is unraveling. And they're going to try and put in even more measures of control. And as that happens, and if you're like, who's they and what is it? Well, here's just a very blatant example. FedNow, look it up, FedNow. It's basically a central bank digital currency that is being used to attempt to control how money flows in the United States. Pretty interesting stuff. The infinite game is us taking responsibility for that, because at some point it's going to come knocking on your door. You're seeing more and more riots happening in cities. You're seeing more and more unrest. You're seeing more and more polarization. You're seeing AI getting real crazy nowadays, like really insane what's capable of, and that's only going to increase. So the real infinite game is us embracing reality fully. Embracing reality fully and saying, look, I am responsible for this, and I'm going to direct this. We're going to figure it out. But that takes self-honesty. It takes certainty. It takes real effective education. You have to be able to reprogram yourself. You have to be able to read, input a massive amount of information, and you have to understand it's an infinite game. Because when we do get the system changed, as you do live out your purpose, then there's going to be more stuff to figure out. It's not like, oh great, we changed the system, we got enough laws passed, okay, we're good, sit back and drink pina coladas. It's like, at that point, then it's shifting into what we would call the path of prevention. Now we prevent the shit from happening. Because right now we're still dealing with consequence. Right now we're still dealing with a lot of consequence in the world. I mean, look at what's happening in Eastern Europe right now. It's like that's happening because years and years and years and years of disagreement. You have the UN, you have NATO, you have all this stuff happening, and it's still playing out these old consequences. Now, we're working on correcting that. We're working on educating the masses, providing solutions politically, all of that. I'm not here to complain at all. You'll never hear me complain. I'm here to point out solutions and help you get involved so you can realize as you take on purpose and the infinite game and you make a lot of money and you live a really cool life that people want to emulate you and people will listen to you because they're like, wow, you're so stable. You have a great relationship. You have cool kids. Like, I enjoy listening to you. I enjoy being around you. People will listen to you and people will pay you a lot of money just to be around you because you have real value to provide them. But that's cultivated over time. Now, to bring it full circle to what I was sharing earlier in this episode about when you scale a culture too fast or when you scale something too fast, here's what's really cool is when you scale something right, there's a compound effect. I've seen it time and time again, and I've seen people's stuff blow up. Like you're steady, putting in every day, little bit, little bit, little bit. The value is getting stored, and it compounds and compounds and compounds. Like a child. I'm seeing this firsthand with my son. he's not really talking at all, not really talking. And then one day, boom, he won't stop going, ah, ah, ah. And he's just making sounds. And at some point, it's going to click and it's going to be full on words and sentences. And then at a certain point, the comprehension will go up again. He'll start asking why and want me to explain things to him. And it's just like in a relationship. You just keep investing and investing and investing. And then one day, if it's done effectively, you're like, whoa, this is insanely valuable. Like my relationship with my wife is so valuable. Not just because she loves me and I love her and we have good feelings together and all that. Of course, that stuff is great. But the value of it is that I have someone who has my best interest at heart and vice versa. And I can always give to her and feed into her and vice versa. And now she's a sounding board for me. I'm a sounding board for her. And we work together as a unit and we make decisions as a family. And it's amazing. That's an asset of sorts because we're playing the infinite game. We're aligned in purpose and we realize it's always going to keep getting better for the rest of our lives. That's our commitment. That's our decision. And it doesn't just happen passively. It happens because every day we're willing to face and look at the darkest, most difficult shit and deal with it. And when there's something in my mind where I say, I have to bring that up to Jess because, this or this is weighing on me or whatever. In the past, I used to be like, I'll just do it later. Now it's like, nah, I just do it. You just do it. You don't make an excuse. I mean, there's a little context there. There's an appropriate time. If she's in the middle of something and, it's like, find the space and time. But you, in your self-honesty, you go after it. That's perfection right there. And so, sharing this because I'm seeing the value being stored into these systems. I've seen my value go through the roof. I've seen the market response or the public response, whatever you want to call it, to the movement, self-perfected, to what we're doing with education, disrupting the education industry with TechnoTutor, seeing the people in our community level up, seeing the new families that are in here, seeing the kids at a whole nother level. I mean, really living purpose, the very manifestation of purpose. And I know where it's headed, and I'm very excited for it. Because the reason it's going to work so well is because these other movements I've been part of and these other cultures and different things that have been learning processes for me, and I've learned from other mentors and friends and all that, because on some level, they're still playing the finite game. They're still playing the game of, I am excited because then we're going to grow it and then we have exit strategy. I have no fucking exit strategy for what I'm doing. The idea of an exit strategy shows you're not clear on why. Like, I get it. There's context to it. I understand if someone right now has some business and then they want to offboard and exit it. But when you know your real purpose, there's no exit strategy. It's an infinite game of you getting better and better and better and better and better at doing it. And it's your craft and no one can take that from you. It's amazing. But if you're not deep down, honestly, aligning that to creating an outcome that's best for everyone, you're still limiting yourself because you're being dishonest about the fact that we're all connected. We're all sharing this earth. And the thing is, do you want to store your value and compound and put your investments into a bank that's going to collapse because it's just based on self-interest and survival only? Or do you want to put your investments into creating a system that's best for everyone? And that system, put very plain, reach out to me and we can chat about what that specifically looks like. But at a high level, it's you investing in the community and the relationships and the network and the support and the tools to develop yourself as a human and to create the greatest relationship with your spouse. If you don't have a spouse yet, get on that. Reach out to the community. We have a singles thread in the self-perfected group and everything. And then also developing this next generation of kids. Like, I've been playing around with this idea called the genius generation. It's both the generation of kids that are geniuses, but also you're generating geniuses, like you're creating them. And it's, talk about a storehouse of value. Talk about a bank of value. We got 5 and 6 year old kids that are literally 5, 6, 7 years ahead of their peers. and they're just normal little kids. Like they just hang out and they still finger paint for fun and that kind of thing. They're like adorable little kids. And they can reason, they can talk, they can hold a conversation, and their parents don't suppress them. And their parents don't lie to them. And as I'm looking at the infinite game, that's perfection of the infinite game. Really, really cool to consider. And beyond just considering it, really, really cool to apply. Because as you do it over and over and over and over and over and over, the compound effect is insane. And you're going to see all my stuff pop off. You're going to see Jessica's stuff pop off, Cameron, Drake, core people in the community, and then everyone in the community is growing and growing and growing. Because we live in space-time reality, and the system isn't necessarily supporting the liberation of everyone at the moment. It's a process, but it's like building something worthwhile. It's like getting really strong muscles. There's a lot of weight and a lot of time you got to put into that. And it's the best thing ever. So I'll end it with this phrase. This is a really helpful phrase I got from a book called The Self-Made Billionaire Effect, and it's really stuck with me. And it's called patient urgency. And it's like they profile these billionaires. And so you have to take it with a grain of salt because they're not actually in the room with them. But they give this example, and they say that billionaires that they've studied, there's like 200 of them in this study, they all are cool with holding a contrasting paradigm of being both urgent, like go, 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 and extremely patient, like being okay with things taking a long time, like decades and decades. And they marry that in this term called patient urgency. And as we have patient urgency for your purpose, for all of reality, to be the best it can possibly be, pretty amazing stuff is possible. I mean, literally anything is possible if you have the right patience, prioritization, activity, all that. So thanks for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe, share this all over. Like, this is some cutting edge stuff, and it's only going to keep getting better. I mean, you see the numbers in here. I think this is number 008 or 009. 00 for a reason. Playing the infinite game. Okay? Building in person, locally. I go to events all the time. Also building online. All the above. The more you do, the more you realize you can do. The more responsibility you can take on, the wealthier you become, the more impact you can have, all of it. Because it's the infinite game. It's the best way to do it. All right. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the next episode.